All right then, quickly. Structure in My Last Duchess. The first thing to know about My Last Duchess is that whilst it might not feel like it, it's an incredibly structured poem. It's in iambic pentameter, it's in rhyming couplets. It's probably the most perfect iambic pentameter and the most disciplined piece of poetry in the entire anthology, actually. I haven't counted all 56 lines of it, but the ones I know are absolutely correct. Strict iambic pentameter, 10 syllables per line, arranged in unstressed to stressed throughout. And yet, because this is a dramatic monologue, or a poetic dramatic monologue, I suppose, it doesn't feel that way. And there's something a bit weird going on there. So let's read the first sort of 8-10 lines or so, and see if you can see what I mean. So this is me reading it as you would read it. This is me reading it as the character, the Duke of Ferrara. That's my last Duchess painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive. I call that piece a wonder now. Fra Pandolf's hands worked busily a day, and there she stands. Wilt please you sit and look at her? I said Fra Pandolf by design, for never read strangers like you that pictured countenance, the depth and passion of its earnest glance, but to myself they turned, since none puts by the curtain I've drawn for you but I, and seemed as they would ask me, if they durst, how such a glance came there. So not the first are you to turn and ask thus, sir. I'll stop there. I could go on. I love this poem. I should explain, actually. I love this poem. I think it's an absolute masterpiece. I think it's the best piece of poetic characterization that I can think of. Certainly the best one that I can think of in sort of 19th century romantic English tradition. So, it's a masterpiece. There's such compression of characterization. You get to know the Duke so well in this relatively short space that I think he's a better drawn and more fleshed out villain than you get in a lot of 800-page novels from the same sort of period. So yeah, absolute masterpiece. And you can hear it there, can't you? You can hear his condescension and his snobbery. You can hear his materialism. He is pompous and arrogant. He talks over people. He tells them what they think. You note, for example, that, never read strangers like you that pictured countenance. He's telling him what he thinks, that you would turn and ask me if you dared. He's totally happy with the idea that people do not dare to ask him questions because he's so powerful and scary. But also that he knows exactly what they would ask him if they dared. He's solipsistic and a narcissist. And, as the poem goes on, it becomes very clear, an evil psychopath. But I don't want to talk about any of that today. I want to talk very, very briefly about the fact that this poem is, as I said, in rhyming couplets and is in iambic pentameter. So let me read it again to stress the rhythm and the rhymes. Now, once you do this, the characterization falls away. You're no longer listening to a confident, easy, fluid speech. It no longer sounds like a person talking to you. It sounds like a poem. So, that's my last Duchess painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive. I call. No, hang on. Looking as if she were alive. I call that piece a wonder now, Fra Pandolf's hands worked busily a day, and there she stands. Will please you sit and look at her? I said, Fra Pandolf by design, for never read strangers like you that pictured countenance. No one would read it like that. It sounds bad like that. And yet you can. Yeah? That's my last Duchess painted on the wall. Ti-tum, 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 ti-tum. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Yeah? It's perfect iambic pentameter. And it stays that way throughout, with one or two possible shifts in stress, but certainly never in syllables or anything of that sort. So why? Why go to so much effort then, and why doesn't it feel that way when you read it? And the answer is because Browning has done everything he can to stop us reading it as a poem. Almost none of the lines are end-stopped, and when they are, there is a caesura forced by punctuation in the middle of the line. So if you take line 2, looking as if she were alive I call, But you can't read it like that because I call and as if she were alive are separated by a full stop. So you have to pause there. Looking as if she were alive. I call that piece a wonder now. And there is no end stop. It enjambs from I call into that piece of wonder now. So that sentence only makes sense if you read on with it. So he does everything he can to stop you pausing at the rhymes. Moreover, the rhythm, though there, is broken on occasion. I had to stop myself and go back and say looking as if she were, because you can say looking, but you can say looking as well. You say both of those things. And so there's enough places there where the rhythm, which is there, is nonetheless broken intentionally. So what do you get? Well, you get him showing you that he's absolutely at the peak of his versification and poetic powers. Yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly disciplined, structured, a brilliant piece, as I said, poetic virtuoso. But at the same time, it is sacrificed to the importance of characterization. He wants to tell a story. He wants us engaged with the narrative, and most of all, he wants us to know the character so that we can be shocked to our bones when we realize what this awful man is capable of. And to stick with the usual rule that I have, which is that there's no point noticing something about a structure unless it helps you tell the story or express the message of the poem. Well, what we're left with then is a poem that looks like one thing. I mean, it does, look. Those poems are all, those lines are all the same length. The rhyming couplet is clear. Anybody approaching this for the first time in an exam or something and going, like trying to work out the rhyme scheme, would go A, B, B, C, C, D, D. And they are too. They're not half rhymes. They're perfect rhymes throughout. So it looks like one thing, and then it doesn't appear like that. It reads as something else entirely. Appearance and reality are very different here. The structure and the form, the formality of the poem are a different experience to the reading of it. Now, given that this is in the voice of and in the perspective of a character who presents as one thing but is something else, who presents as a formal, reserved, gentlemanly figure, a catch, a good husband, but that as we read it, it becomes clear to us that what we're dealing with here is someone who is very, very dangerous, sick in the brain, a sociopath, as I said, then yeah, we have another example of where the rhythm and the rhyme, the structure of the piece, help the poet to communicate their message. Okay, cheers.